It's early morning in Manchester. Soft sunlight spills through the kitchen window, glinting off the steam rising from my mug of tea. My 2 cats, Kimchi and Frittata, circle my feet like little guardians, purring their sleepy greetings. On the shelf, a save-the-date card leans against a vase of dried flowers, a reminder that my wedding is coming up next October. My life looks calm now, tea cats, a cozy kitchen, and love. But inside me, there's still a deep, dark lake, a place where memories lurk and pull at me when I least expect it. My name is Tatyana Frost. I live with Bipolar I disorder episodes where I can go days without sleep, my thoughts racing so fast I can't even catch them, only to crash hard into depression so heavy it feels impossible to get out of bed. I live with borderline personality disorder, BPD, where emotions hit like tidal waves, where I fear abandonment so deeply it can make me overreact to the smallest things. And I live with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, a shadow of childhood neglect and violence, filled with nightmares, flashbacks, and a nervous system that never truly feels safe. But here's the thing, I'm not defined by those diagnoses. I'm not saying that to sound strong. I'm saying it because if I had truly believed I was those labels, I wouldn't be sitting here now, sipping tea in my small Manchester apartment, planning a wedding, loving a man enough to want to build a whole life together. Yes, I have these diagnoses, but I also have love, resilience, tenderness, and a relentless desire to find light after years of darkness. Getting here, though, meant walking through a childhood where every door I opened seemed to lead to another dark room. I was born in Ulyanovsk, Russia, the first place I learned to cry without anyone hearing me. Before I could even speak, I was taken from my birth home because of neglect and suspected abuse. My adoptive family brought me to the U.S. and gave me safety. But love often came with criticism and coldness. I grew up believing I'd never be good enough, never truly loved. Each time my feelings were dismissed, another door inside me slammed shut, and over time, those doors got heavier and harder to open. I was only 9 the first time I thought about disappearing. I was too young to fully understand death, but I knew it might make the pain stop. I wrote in my journal with shaky handwriting about being invisible, about wishing I could just vanish. That night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling fan creaking above me, I imagined myself fading away like dust in a sunbeam. From that point on, I learned how to smile when I was being scolded to swallow tears before anyone could see. Feeling unwanted became the air I breathed, silent but everywhere. And today I want to share with you how I've worked to break free from that shadow. This is my journey out of the darkness, and I'd love for you to walk through it with me. By the time I was 17, that dark lake inside me had turned into a raging storm. I'd go 4, sometimes 5 nights without sleep, pacing my bedroom at 3 a.m., wired like I'd been hooked up to an electric current. My thoughts were racing so fast I could barely get the words out. I was talking a mile a minute, jittery, laughing too loud, convinced I was untouchable. One night I stood in front of my window with my arms out like wings, absolutely sure I could fly. And then just like that, I crashed. It wasn't just sadness, it was like gravity doubled overnight. My body felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I couldn't get out of bed. I failed a test for the first time in my life and I didn't even care. I remember working up the courage to tell my mom that something was deeply wrong, that I felt broken in a way I couldn't explain. She didn't even look up from her phone when she said, "You're being dramatic. You're just lonely. Maybe you need to take some iron." Her words cut sharper than any blade. The way she dismissed me, rolled her eyes, sighed like I was an inconvenience, made me feel smaller than I'd ever felt. It wasn't just that she didn't believe me, it was that she wouldn't even try. And that night in my room with the door shut, I thought, if my own mother thinks I'm making this up, maybe I really am crazy. Another heavy door slammed shut inside me. But then someone else noticed. My school guidance counselor stopped me after class one day and said softly, "Hey, you don't seem okay. Can we talk?" For the first time in my life, someone leaned in instead of looking away. She listened. She believed me. And because of her, I ended up in a psychiatric hospital for the first time. When the doctor wrote Bipolar I on my chart, it felt like a life sentence. At 17, it didn't feel like a diagnosis. It felt like a verdict, like my future had just been handed to me in a manila folder. But now I see that was also the first door that opened in years. And it wasn't my mother who opened it. It was a compassionate adult who saw me when no one else cared. Sometimes safety doesn't come from family. It comes from a stranger willing to listen. Summer came, and I went back to school with a hospital bracelet tan line on my wrist, like some secret scarlet letter only I could see. Our school had this tradition: first week back, every student had to stand up and share about their summer. One by one, kids told stories about beach trips, summer jobs, campfires, and new friendships. I sat there rehearsing lies in my head. I traveled. I read a lot. I stayed home. Anything would have been safer than the truth. When it was my turn, I walked to the front of the classroom. My legs felt like they were made of cement. My palms were slick with sweat. I looked at my classmates, some whispering, some smiling politely, and for a split second I thought about lying. I could make myself sound normal. I could stay invisible. But something in me was tired of hiding, so I told the truth. I'd spent the summer in a psychiatric hospital. I didn't share details. I didn't cry. I just said it flat and simple, like ripping off a Band-Aid. The room went silent. My heart pounded so hard I thought I might faint. Then a girl in the back raised her hand and asked softly, "Are you okay?" That one question cracked something open inside me. No one had ever asked me that, and actually meant it. Not my mother, not my family. But here was a classmate, a near stranger, looking at me with genuine concern. That small moment was the first time my pain felt seen, and it was like a heavy door creaked open just a little. Looking back now, there's research that shows why moments like that matter so much. Psychiatrist Dr. Bruce Perry once said that healing from trauma isn't about logic or even treatment plans. At first, it's about connection. Just one safe, compassionate person can shift a child's entire nervous system out of survival mode. In that classroom, with one simple question, I felt a flicker of safety for the first time in years. That moment didn't fix everything. I still went home to slam doors and cold stares. I still woke up in the night shaking from nightmares. But that day planted a seed. Maybe I wasn't crazy. Maybe I wasn't alone. Maybe I didn't have to spend my life behind locked doors. College was my first real taste of freedom. Moving out of my adoptive parents' house felt like finally being able to exhale after holding my breath for years. I got to choose when I went to bed, what I ate, who I hung out with. I started going to therapy, consistently taking my meds on time, and working out just enough to feel human again. I wasn't cured, but for the first time, I felt like I had a grip on life. I could actually laugh without feeling like I was about to be punished for it. That's when I realized something huge: mental health isn't just about grit or willpower. It's about environment. Trauma researchers like Dr. Bruce Perry say the brain doesn't heal well when it's living in survival mode. And that was me. I wasn't broken. I was just unsafe. 70% of healing is where you are, 30% is what you do. Then 2020 happened. COVID hit schools, closed dorms, locked down. We were all told to go home, so I packed my stuff and went back to my parents' house, the same place where my body had learned to brace for impact. The second I stepped through that door, my chest tightened. The smell of the hallway, the sound of cabinets slamming, it was like my nervous system was saying, "We know this place. Get ready." My mom hadn't changed. She'd toss out cutting comments. "You're lazy.
You're lazy.
You're too sensitive. No one's gonna take care of you." And I'd just shrink back into myself like I was 12 again. Lockdowns meant there was nowhere to run. Therapists talk about state-dependent memory, how your body remembers trauma in a way your mind can't always rationalize. That's exactly what happened. My heart would race just hearing footsteps in the hallway. I started skipping meals, sleeping all day, and spiraling. When restrictions finally started lifting, I knew I had to get out. But jobs were scarce, and I was broke. So I packed a duffel bag and crashed at my best friend's apartment. We squeezed onto her couch, ate cheap takeout, and split grocery bills. But I felt safer there than I had in years. That tiny apartment with its mismatched furniture and peeling paint felt like a sanctuary. It wasn't until 2022 that I finally moved in with my boyfriend, now my fiancé. It wasn't some perfect movie moment. We were both broke, stressed, and figuring life out, but it was the first time I felt like I could actually build a future instead of just surviving. Those years taught me a lesson I still hold on to. Healing isn't a straight line. You can take 5 steps forward and then get knocked back 3, and that's still progress. The nervous system heals in waves, not in a perfect upward climb. And back then, in the middle of all the chaos, I thought I was failing. Looking back now, I realize I was fighting for my life and winning one tiny step at a time. By 2023, I thought I was finally pulling my life together. Living with my fiancé felt safe. We were broke, sure, but we had love. I was working in mental health, helping other people through their pain. And for a while, I actually started to believe maybe all the hell I'd been through had a purpose, that I could use my story to help someone else. Then everything shattered. I signed up for a self-defense class thinking it would make me feel stronger, safer in my own skin. Instead, that gym became the scene of one of the darkest nights of my life. The instructor went way too far. During a drill, he pinned me down, pressing himself into me, his hands lingering where they had no business being. I froze. And when I froze, he leaned down and whispered something disgusting in my ear. In that moment, I left my body. My muscles locked up, my throat closed, and I couldn't scream. I wasn't in that gym anymore. I was a kid again, small, trapped, powerless. My vision blurred, my ears rang, and all I could hear was the sound of my heart pounding like a war drum. That wasn't inappropriate, that was an assault. And it cracked me wide open like dropping a glass jar on concrete. From that night on, I wasn't the same. PTSD came back with a vengeance. I couldn't sleep without nightmares ripping me out of bed. Flashbacks hit me while brushing my teeth, making dinner, even sitting on the couch. One second I'd be safe at home, and the next I'd feel his weight on top of me again. My body would go into full panic before my brain even understood what was happening. Heart racing, trembling, dissociating so hard, I'd lose hours just staring at a wall. At home, my fiancé did his best. He held me while I sobbed or spiraled, but I could see the fear in his eyes. He didn't know how to help, and I didn't know how to let him. The shame was crushing. One night, I completely lost it and threw a glass at the wall just to release the pressure boiling inside of me. The sound of it shattering was deafening. He stood there stunned, and I sank to the floor, shaking and crying, hating myself for letting him see me like that. Work became unbearable. I'd smile at clients and guide them through their trauma, then break down in my car the second the door closed. Eventually, I cut back to part-time. On paper, it was for my mental health, but inside it felt like failure, like proof I wasn't good enough to do the job I loved. There's a special kind of shame that comes with being in the mental health field while drowning in your own trauma. I'd look at myself in the mirror and think, if they knew how broken I really am, they'd never trust me. And honestly, I barely recognized the person staring back. After that assault, I stopped saying my diagnoses were just part of me. They felt like they were me. The nightmares, the rage, the panic attacks, they weren't symptoms anymore. They were my entire identity. One night, I stood in front of the mirror, hands, shaking, eyes swollen, and whispered to myself, "She's gone. I've lost me." That was rock bottom. After the assault, it felt like my whole life turned into one long funeral. Not for a person, but for me. For every version of myself I'd ever dreamed of being. It wasn't just one big goodbye, it was 100 small ones. Each new diagnosis was like another coffin lowered into the ground. Bipolar I, borderline personality disorder, PTSD. Every time I heard one of those words, I felt another piece of me die. I grieved a life I never even got to live. The carefree 20s I thought I'd have, where my biggest worry would be rent or what to wear to a party. The career I imagined stable, confident, proud. The version of me who smiled easily, who wasn't constantly bracing for impact. I'd stare at old photos of myself as a child and wonder if she'd recognize me, or if she'd run from the woman I'd become. There were nights I'd stand in front of the mirror, tears burning down my cheeks, whispering, "Who even am I anymore? Am I just these labels? Is this all I'll ever be?" That question echoed through me like a scream in an empty house. And sometimes I believed the answer was yes. But then somewhere in that darkness, a quiet thought began to rise. It wasn't loud, it wasn't poetic, it was just a whisper. You have these diagnoses.
I have bipolar.
You are not these diagnoses.
I have BPD.
I started
PTSD.
saying it out loud, even when my voice shook, even when I didn't believe a single word. I have bipolar, I have BPD, I have PTSD, but I'm not them. It felt clumsy at first, but it was like throwing myself a rope in a raging storm. People don't say I am cancer or I am diabetes. Why should I let these diagnoses swallow my entire identity? That mantra became my lifeline. On nights I felt like I was drowning, I'd repeat it through gritted teeth. I have this pain, but I am not this pain. I have these scars, but I am not just these scars. It didn't magically fix me. It didn't erase the grief or the shame. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a crack of light seep through, like a window opening in a pitch-black room. It wasn't freedom yet, but it was hope. Healing wasn't a straight road. It felt more like crawling through broken glass, slowly collecting tools I didn't even know I needed. After years of believing I was my diagnoses, I decided I had to understand them. I devoured books like An Unquiet Mind by K. Redfield Jamison and I Hate You, Don't Leave Me. Finally seeing my struggles in black and white, for the first time I realized I wasn't a lost cause. My pain wasn't random, it was patterned, predictable, and most importantly, treatable. Reading stories from people like me gave me something I hadn't felt in years: hope. I started tracking my moods every single day with an app called eMoods. Logging my sleep irritability triggers and medication helped me see patterns that my chaotic mind couldn't. Research shows that mood tracking improves treatment outcomes for bipolar disorder because it gives both you and your doctor concrete data to adjust meds and catch warning signs early. For me, it felt like I was finally steering the ship instead of just being tossed around by waves. I rebuilt my life around small, sacred routines. A strict bedtime became non-negotiable because sleep deprivation is one of the strongest triggers for mania. Yoga, backed by research showing it reduces cortisol and trauma symptoms, became my way to reconnect with my body after years of feeling like it wasn't safe to live inside it. And journaling wasn't just self-care. Studies show expressive writing helps regulate the amygdala, the brain's fear center, and lowers emotional reactivity. These habits weren't glamorous, but they were survival. Therapy became my lifeline. Through IFS internal family systems, I learned to sit with the parts of me that carried shame, anger, and fear instead of silencing or hating them. Research supports IFS as an evidence-based trauma treatment. When we treat these parts with compassion, the brain can rewire itself and move out of survival mode. EMDR eye movement, desensitization and reprocessing, changed my life. Decades of trauma felt like they lived in my bones. But EMDR, which is highly recommended by the World Health Organization for PTSD, helped my brain reprocess those memories so they no longer felt like they were happening right now. Over time, flashbacks softened, nightmares lost their edge, and I finally felt like I could breathe again. Learning about polyvagal theory gave me another key. I began practicing deep breathing, humming, and gentle movement to calm my vagus nerve, the part of the nervous system that controls fight or flight responses. Dr. Stephen Porges' research shows that activating the vagus nerve helps people with trauma feel safe in their bodies again. For me, it was like finding an off switch for the constant alarm bell ringing inside me. And then there was group therapy. At first, I was terrified to speak. I thought my story was too much, that I'd scare people away. But instead, I was met with nods, tears, and understanding. Psychodrama techniques, where we reenacted painful memories in a safe space, allowed me to rewrite moments I'd been trapped in for years. There's science to back this up, too. Psychodrama activates the mirror neuron system, helping people regulate emotions by practicing healthier reactions in real time. But the most powerful medicine was love. My fiancé stayed even when I felt unlovable. He held me through panic attacks, celebrated the smallest victories, and showed me that safe relationships really can rewire a traumatized brain. Studies confirm that healing from relational trauma often requires corrective emotional experiences, relationships where safety replaces fear. For me, those experiences came not just from him, but from friends, chosen family, and a community that saw me as more than a list of diagnoses. These tools didn't fix me overnight. Healing isn't a clean upward climb. It's a jagged mountain with falls and scrapes along the way. But now, instead of feeling lost in the dark, I had a map, a flashlight, and people willing to walk beside me. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't just surviving. I was learning how to live. One night, after another therapy session, where I felt like I'd ripped open every old wound, I sat down at my kitchen table with a notebook. I lit a candle more out of habit than anything else, and I started writing a letter to my mom. It wasn't polite. It wasn't pretty. I poured out everything I'd carried for years, every time I felt small, every time I cried myself to sleep, because her words cut deeper than she'd ever admit. But then, somewhere between pages of anger and grief, I wrote something I didn't expect. I forgive you. I didn't write it for her. I wrote it for me. And the truth is, I never sent that letter. I tore it out of the notebook and folded it up, then tucked it in a drawer. It wasn't about her reading it. It was about me letting go. That night, I also forgave myself for not being the perfect daughter, for struggling, for needing help, for being human. I realized I'd been carrying her voice in my head for years, and I didn't need to anymore. Forgiveness wasn't a single act. It was like loosening a rope that had been strangling me. I chose my own family that night, my fiancé, my friends who'd sat with me on bathroom floors during panic attacks, my therapy group that cheered for me when I shared my smallest victories. Those were my people. They were the ones who deserved my heart. The deep lake inside me is still there. Trauma doesn't disappear, but for the first time, its surface feels calm. The water isn't thrashing anymore, and for the first time in my life, I feel like I've reclaimed who I am. These days, my life isn't perfect, but it's intentional. I wake up, make tea, and play with my cats, Kimchi and Frittata, while sunlight pours through the window. I check my mood tracker on eMoods, take my meds, and spend 5 minutes breathing deeply before starting my day. Those small routines are my anchors, my proof that stability is built one tiny brick at a time. I still work in mental health, but now as a counselor. It feels surreal sometimes, sitting in front of someone who's drowning in their pain and knowing exactly how that feels. I get to tell them something I had to fight to believe myself. You have these diagnoses, but they don't define you. I see their eyes widen the way mine once did, and I realize I'm handing them the same lifeline I once needed. The doors in my story used to slam shut doors of rejection, misunderstanding, shame. But now I get to be the one opening doors for others. And every time I watch a client take a shaky step forward, I'm reminded that healing is contagious. This October, I'll walk down the aisle in a simple dress I picked out months ago. Our wedding invitations have little sketches of our cats, Kimchi and Frittata, because of course they do. They're family. In the pocket of my dress, I'll carry a tiny piece of paper with a reminder written in my own handwriting: exhale longer than you inhale. When that day comes and I stand there next to the man who stayed through every storm I know, I'll look back at every slammed door, every night I thought I wouldn't make it, every diagnosis that felt like a sentence. And I'll realize every single one of those closed doors led me here, to this moment, to this life. Here's what I want you to take from my story. You are not your diagnosis. Healing is not a straight line. It's a zigzag road, full of steps forward and steps back. Safe relationships are medicine. Micro habits matter. Breathing, sleeping, moving your body, tracking your moods. Those little things build the bridge to healing. And most of all, you have these struggles, but you are not defined by the... If you're watching this and you're in the middle of your own storm, please know you're not broken and you're not alone. Healing is messy, but it's possible. I'm living proof. If this story resonated with you, I'd love for you to join our community here on The Truth MD. Like, subscribe, and share this episode because you never know who might need to hear that hope is real. Together, we can make these conversations louder, break the stigma, and remind people everywhere you are more than your diagnosis.